What I'm going to do today, hopefully, without too much grief, is change the door handle on the passenger side door with its associated door lock. So we're going to give that an attempt. We're going to try and get it in without removing the door glass, which I believe is possible, and hopefully we won't have too many cut wrists. So the reason I'm doing this is because we had a key which had failed on me, and I've changed already previous to this video a driver's door lock, and I've changed the ignition barrel on this car because I had the typical spinning barrel problem. I'm going to be putting this door handle here in, which is a replacement door handle from another E36. It's the same key that I've got on the other side of my car, so this then matches up. Up until now, I've basically had one door lock which works in the car. Before I start, I want to show you one of the most important things about these door handles. They have a trim on the outside of the door which we'll insert a photograph of here. And that trim is removed by moving this brass plate that you can see sort of hidden behind the door handle. If I turn it round, you can actually see on the back here, if I push it back to its original position, this brass plate, it runs along the back of the door handle in here. It's designed in such a way that there's an access hole at the side of the door, and what I'm going to basically do is put a screwdriver in and push on that door plate like so, and that's going to release the trim on the outside of the door. Now, I know there's a couple of videos on YouTube which show this quite clearly, but there is one video on YouTube which I've seen where the guy says that you basically just pry the door handle out. If you do that, these holes that have been exposed here and here will be closed, like so, and you'll break your trim, guys. So don't do that. You want to do it the slightly harder way by putting something into the access hole on the side of the door and push, whoop, not that hard, push this clip forwards so it releases your door handle trim. Right, so we'll start the process. You'll see me do that in just a few moments. What we need to begin with doing is obviously taking the door card off this door. So it's a fairly easy process. Now, one thing I will say is my car is getting on a bit now, and these door cards are pretty knackered. So there's not a lot of removing that I have to do, and I'm not going to be very gentle with it. If I was doing this on a very, very clean E36 BMW, I'd be using trim removal tools to pop out the trim clips that are in the door card and things. I'm not going to bother doing that because really I don't care about these door cards. They're going to be swapped out fairly soon anyway, as soon as I find a decent set. So the process is basically the same. The place you want to start is behind the door handle here. There's a couple of plastic sort of bolt covers. And they're sort of semicircular shape like that, and you can just get a screwdriver and pry them up. They're dead easy to remove. Get the second one out. You should have two Torx bit screws hidden behind these panels. Now on my car I don't have that, I've just got one Phillips head screw holding this door card on. So if I just get down there and I'll remove that one screw right now, it's sort of buried underneath the door handle, but with a magnetic screwdriver or a magnetic Torx bit screwdriver you can pull them out quite easily. If they drop into the door card, it's not the end of the world. You can always retrieve them at the end of the process once you remove the door card. I think, looking like it, mine doesn't want to play ball, so we'll take that out in a minute. The door handle trim itself is fairly easy to remove. This trim here moves forwards towards the front of the door and then will come away, and you can see that by looking at the clips on the back of it. When I actually take the door card off, I'll show you how that sort of sits in the door handle a bit better. And then basically the door card can be removed. So we've got a whole load of plastic scribbit clips all the way around the door handle, all the way up the side, all the way around the pockets. And then at the top, the door itself is clipped towards the front. The door card, sorry, is clipped towards the front of the door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it away around the outsides, and I'm going to pull it away from the top, bearing in mind we've got the locking piece in place here. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to twist this off up the top. It just gives you a little bit extra clearance when you're removing the door card, and I'd say if you're doing this with a clean BMW E36 you definitely want to remove that. So we'll put that off to the side and keep that safe. A little tip I can give you is on the E36, these pockets here are actually separate parts to the door card. BMW didn't mould it as one piece, and one of the most common problems that you see is that when someone goes to pull the door card away, they pull on the door and not on the pockets. What you want to do really is get your hands in the pockets and pry away and work your way up towards it. As you can see, my door card is almost free already, so I don't have to worry about any of that. What I'm basically going to do is get up here and peel it away at the top. It may come apart as I do this because this one, as I said, is so old and knackered. Yep, there we go. Right, so my door card is basically off. You want to just unplug the speaker from the back of the door card, That's just a small 3-pin plug like so, and then pop your door card out the way and get it out here. Okay, so inside here you've got this weather seal here. It's quite important to actually keep that in the car. It stops a lot of the moisture coming from the door into the car. So mine, as you can see, is in terrible condition, so I'll just pull that out the way. And then we have exposed the window regulator and the inside of the door. Now, to remove the handle which is up in here, this is a coupe, guys, so I've got a longer door than you've got in a saloon. On a saloon this is a much easier job. On a coupe, unfortunately, we need to get the glass out of the way. Now, we can either remove the glass, which is quite a long-winded and difficult process because you've got to remove the bump strip from the outside of the door and then undo some bolts which actually bolt a kind of bracket onto the bottom of the window. What I'm hoping to do here is to move the window down and out the way, unclip it from the regulator, and then tip the window forwards by removing this beam at the back of the window here. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'll go and pop the key into the ignition. I'll bring the door down so we can actually see access to where the window regulator joins to the window. Okay, right, so now I've got the door down, so it's in about this position, the window, sorry. With the window regulator, it's got basically 2 sliders. Now these get destroyed, so they'll probably need changed in your car if you've never opened the car up. I've previously done that on this one, so I can just remove them. Now, they've got a spring clip, which if I just pop it off to one side, on either of them, and I'll show you that in a second, allows you to push the spring clips out the way, and then the window regulator has got basically what's 2 balls that then clip into the attachments. Now I've just done that, and as you can see the window's dropped down, that's out of the way. So what I'll now do is I'll now remove this side beam here, and this will then allow me to take the window, move it up slightly and then tip it all forwards at an angle so that we can get a lot of access to it. Just to show you what's going on with the bottom of the window, I don't know if you can make out in here, this is one of the plastic sliders we were talking about. If I pull that out and show you it, 2 top tips for you guys if you're going to be removing this. The rear slider, you want to have the clip pointing towards the back of the car, and when you put it back in you want to clip the clip in completely and then put the slider into the rail. You want to do the opposite for the front one, and the reason for that is it's really difficult to get a screwdriver in and pull this spring clip out the way when the window regulator arm is in place. So what you want to do is have the spring clip that way around at the front and this way around at the back. Push your spring clips in so they're fully engaged, put the sliders into the window regulator slider, the window slider, and then you pop the window regulator back on. You'll see all that at the end of the video. So at the moment I'll just put that down to the side. Now this bar here comes out fairly easily. I believe, if I'm right in saying, it's got an Allen key bits at the bottom, which I'm actually going to use a Torx bit on because I'm lazy. And I'm going to undo these 2 bolts at the very bottom of the door here. And then there's 2 10mm bolts up there at the top. So we'll just crack all of these and then we'll loosen them off at the end. Okay. So there we've got our 2 Allen key bolts there, and a T30 Torx bit, if you're a lazy man like me, fits in there fairly nicely. So that's T30 Torx. Right, so now I should be able to remove this beam out of the way of the window if we're clever about the way it comes out. To remove this brass bar, what you need to basically do is take off the roller which is attached to the window, and that's got 2 10mm nuts on it which are actually cut into a slotted hole. So you want to really mark that up so you can get the window back in exactly the same place, or you're going to have a bit of a fiddle around with it at the end to make sure the window stays inside the runner channel. So you move the window all the way up then once you've undone the 2 nuts, and you should then find that this bar here you can get out by removing at this sort of angle. So you let it drop down at the back, push it forwards at the front, and you can bring it out a large hole here. What I'm now hoping to be able to do is to tip the whole window forwards into the door and out the way of the door handle. You can see we've got a part of the window exposed up here that's never normally been exposed to the daylight. It's absolutely filthy. And I can now get my handle up at the back, my hand up at the back of the door handle. Right, so to remove the actual door handle itself, I've watched a couple of people do this. It seems to be the easiest course of action here is to remove the door handle and the locking mechanism at the same time. And what you're going to have to bear in mind is it's all attached via this bar here to this front handle. At this point, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the actual door handle itself. It's just one little T20 Torx bit. And then I believe it clips in at the front of the handle. So take that out nice and carefully. And then what we need to do is get this handle off of this arm here. Right, so now the arm is loose. And as I said, I'll show you how this all fits together. You can see on the handle there's these little protrusions, these little nubs. Your handle cover sits in behind and just slots in nice and tight around them. So it's dead easy to remove, just push it forwards. There we go. Right, so I think we'll start off by undoing as much wiring as we possibly can. So this is the main wiring trunk to the door lock itself. This one, unfortunately, I don't think we can get access to whilst it's all still in there. But I have removed the plug which is inside the door now, which goes up to the door handle for the central locking, which is this 2-pin plug here. Now this actually is clipped into the door via a very sort of simple plastic cable tidy. It's kind of a curved shape like so, and the wire sits up here. You can just open this up and slide the wire out. And then this wire is cable tied onto the door. Now I'm hoping that should be alright just to move out of the way at the moment, so we'll just spin it round. And then we need to grab, I think this is another T30 Torx bolt here. Yep. And we're going to undo now the 3 Torx bolts which hold the striker into the door. And these have got a bit of blue thread lock on them, which makes them quite difficult to crack. So you really don't want to round the heads off, guys. You're going to end up with a nightmare job on your hands. Once they're cracked, they can just be wound out. And as soon as you get to this point, you'll see everything starts getting a bit loose. Right, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to leave one of these bolts in just so everything doesn't fall apart on me. And I'm going to go up here to this rubber panel. And in this rubber panel we've got the access hole just behind the rubber panel. Now this is where we start getting to the point where we've got to push that brass arm back into the handle. So I'm just going to come around. Unfortunately, the way BMW have designed this is so that through this gap you basically have vision which is about that. Okay, so the actual thing that we need to push is covered because of the way the door is made itself. As I said a second ago, when you look through the access panel, there's actually a part of the door skin which covers pretty much all of what I'm covering with my hand right now. So what you're going to need is you're going to need something that's L-shaped like this, so you can get in behind that and then you can push this brass part forwards. Okay, so you need something L-shaped. Now this is an old cheap screwdriver I've just bent into an L-shape and it's done the job absolutely perfectly. So now I've moved that handle out the way, that part out the way, I can see now that this is nice and loose. Okay, I'm not forcing that with any pressure whatsoever. And what you want to do is you want to rotate it down and then lift it out. Now this is a great point where you can change the gasket on the back of your handle. I should be doing that by the looks of it. Mine is absolutely knackered, but we'll worry about that later on. And then when we're finished, you can see the handle notches in the trim cover and then slides up into position, and we'll then pull the brass handle back. Right, so we're pretty much 3/4 of the way there. What we now need to do is we need to remove this pin and we need to remove the locking nut. Okay, so the first thing we removed is this pin. This pin comes through from the outside of the door and it's got a little groove in it. And what they do in the factory is they push these clips onto them, which then sort of lock in place on that groove. So to remove this, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pry up on this back side of it slightly and then push the clip. You need 3 hands to do this, as you can see. Push the clip towards the front. So the clip is going to be removed in this direction once you've actually lifted up this sort of safety locking thing here. Try that one more time. There you go, it comes up over the edge and then it just slips off. So taking it off is much harder than putting it on, in other words, guys. Okay, now this is basically a nut that you can see on the outside here with these 4 little indents in it. You can take a screwdriver and you can beat on it with a screwdriver, but you risk the paintwork a lot if you're doing that. I've got a pair of snap ring pliers here I'm hoping to pop into the grooves, and I should, if I'm lucky, be able to just rotate them like so. And once it's undone a couple of times, you should be able to do it with your fingers, guys. Yep, there we go. It's not very tight. And then behind that is a rubber washer, which will either come out now, or it may come out when I try and push the door handle into the car. Now at this point, the door handle is going to go in towards the inside of the car, and then it's going to go forwards. So sort of push it there, there's a rubber washer coming away. We want to keep that, that stops water ingress. And put that all off to the side. And the door handle now should fit through the outside of the door like so. Right, so we'll go back inside now, and now I've got the handle clear of this hole here and the lock is clear. I know that I can start working it from inside. Right, so now I'll remove this last nut, this last bolt, sorry, from the back of the locking mechanism. And then we should have a lot more playroom now. Move everything out and out of the way. Right, now at this point, now I've got access to this clip here, so I'm going to start thinking about trying to remove this plastic part here. That is a simple process of sliding the cover down. There we are. Right, I'll tuck that out of the way there. There's a lot of trial and error, but fairly easily should then have the whole assembly out. Okay, we have one door free. Right, so as you can see, we've got the door lock mechanism here with all its associated little levers and locks. What's going to happen here is I'm going to put this all back together, because this is very, very tricky to all put together when it's in the car. But this is basically how it all goes together. This hooked part comes up into the door lock, the handle connection comes into this part here, and then the whole assembly is going to go back up into the door. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to take this apart and I'm going to give it all a good grease up, because it's a great time to get in here and give it some grease whilst you have all apart in your doors. So we'll put the handle to one side so we know which one is which. This lever I have in my hand is the one that comes up through the hole in the door into the door card. That just attaches like so. So I'm just going to grab some grease, and then we'll come back and we'll reassemble everything and start putting it back into the door. Right, so we've got it all back assembled. I've got a load of grease on it all. The main part I want to make sure I've got connected is this sort of door lock part here, which connects the key to the actual main door lock. So I'm going to drop that handle mechanism in there first, and then pull the actual latching part together. Oh, that's not going to stay like that. That's okay. We'll get it all into the door first. Right, and then what we're going to now do is attempt to get that all lined up. As with most BMW things, you could really do with having about 6 arms to do it all with, but we don't, so there's a lot of fiddling and cursing that sometimes goes on here. So now what we basically want to do is feed the entire lot back up and into the door. So I'm going to start off with the bit that came out last, which is this locking bar here. Push him up and get him through that hole, just like so. There we are. And then the actual handle will go up behind the end of the window. If we hold the mechanism in like so, I've just put a bolt in just to hold him there. Where is it? There we are. I could put some thread lock on this, but I'm not that fussy, guys, so I'm not going to bother. Right, now I can let it go and the whole lot's going to sit there for me, hopefully. Now I'm going to come back up here, I'm going to go outside, and this is a case of just wiggling it around, guys. There's no easy way of doing it, so doing lots of wiggling and fiddling around. Try and make sure that your electrical connections don't fill the bottom of the window at this point. Right, okay. We'll now get this completely into position. So one of the hardest bits to actually get to achieve, guys, is as you put the door handle up and into the door skin, that part of the door skin I spoke about before, which is obscuring your view of the trim clip, the door handle needs to go up behind that. So you need to make sure that when you go up from inside, the door handle is almost pressed up against the inside of the door skin, so that it goes up nice and neatly and it sort of secures itself into place. So at this point now I can put the pin back in over here. Okay guys, so we'll put the trim back on now. And then what we now need to do is pull that brass locking plate back whilst the door handle's in place. So try and get in that same access hole and lever back on it. If that fails, we'll go in from the other side. Can actually push it back so it locks in place. Okay. Put the rubber cover back on. Put our door bolts back in for the striker mechanism. Right, now we can start thinking about putting the window back where it was before. So we'll get the grease out of the way, we don't need that anymore. We don't need the extra door lever. Use our handy bit of cloth. Now at this point we want to plug everything back in. So this was actually cable tied onto here. I said that you might not need to remove that. Sadly it's easier if you get it out of the way. So we then feed this back in to the door and plug her in up here. And that sits in that U-shaped clip. And it'll have a little cable tie holding it out of the way, like so. Most important thing when you do this job, guys, is to make sure that everything is out the way of the window when the window's in place and it starts moving. So your BMW clip works like so. So I can pop this back up and in, and it's much easier to put in than it is to take out. So we'll just line it all up, push it in as far as it goes, and then push up on the clip. It's lovely. Right, and then we'll put the door handle back on. I'll tell you what, that could do with a little bit of grease in there, it wouldn't hurt. And then this, as you can see, it's got a little clip here that clips in forwards at the front, and there's just a little screw at the back. Whilst we're here, beady-eyed of you may notice that I've got a door regulator that looks like it comes from the Flintstones. This has been previously changed before. You can tell that because it's got bolts holding it in and not rivets. And as you can see, it's had a failure here where it's been pig welded back together, and the teeth on the regulator up this end are completely knackered. They're half eaten off, guys. So check my channel, keep your eyes peeled. There'll be a video soon where we actually change this regulator. I'm waiting on a coupe one arriving at the moment. They are different to the saloons. Obviously with a longer door, the coupe needs some longer arms, but we should be able to get that sorted, and we'll have a new one here which we'll show you changing that off fairly soon. Right, okay, so at this point we want to get this brass bar back in place. Before I put this in, I'm definitely going to grease this up. Okay guys, right, so we've got the window all back in now, we've got the rail back in. We had a bit of a mess around with it, and one of the problems that we'd found is the window had come out the front runner even though it looked like it was in. So we had to take all the rail back off again at the back here, get it in the runner, make sure the window is level, and then bolt up the two little bolts which hold it onto this brass runner. Made sure we've got all the cables tidied out the way so there's nothing going to fill the window when it moves up and down. At this point, double check everything works, guys. Make sure your handle works correctly. I'll just shut the door and test that. One of the problems that we've just had is this handle came off the mechanism in here. It was an absolute nightmare to get it back on, but we were able just to take the latching mechanism off and make that happen. And then, you know, at this point, you know, check the door lock, make sure everything works, and if you're happy, you can put the door card back on. I'm going to leave the weather barrier off this door at the moment because I'm going to be coming back and doing the window regulator anytime soon, so I'm not going to bother with that. And my door card, as you can see, is like Frankenstein's door card. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just get it on there as best I can just now and bolt it up and start searching for new door cards, guys. So it's just a dead easy process. You just want to slot your little nubbin through, hang the door card up in position. I'm just going to bang the one screw in underneath the handle that I removed earlier on, which is just here. Oh, that's my little nubbin for the top of there. Okay guys, so it's about an hour and a half's work. It's not an easy job, it's a very fiddly job. Once you're there though, it's one of the most satisfying things you can do, and it really isn't as hard as it looks. It's just, you need a bit of patience to do it, and you need to make sure everything lines up, guys. If you've got any questions, stick them down in the comments. I'm going to be doing some front lower wishbones on this car in the next video that you see come up for the BMW E36. So stay tuned, stay posted. PMO out, guys.